Hello and welcome to Split Screen, brought to you by Insert Coin.
Hello and welcome to Split Screen, brought to you by Insert Coin. My name's Dan Long and I'm here to introduce you to some of the amazing people from in and around the world of video games. People who love playing games just as much as you do. Today, I'd like to welcome Tamoor Hussain. Tamoor is the managing editor of GameSpot and has been a vital part of the games industry for years. He's a champion for positive change within the industry, and his love of Metal Gear and FromSoft Games is unparalleled. Tam, welcome.
That might be the best intro I've ever had. I think I just need to clip that out and just send it to everyone that I know who don't understand what I'm doing.
Do it. That's what we want to see.
Thank you for having me. I'm very excited to be here.
No, that's fantastic to have you, Tam. You are honestly one of my games industry heroes. I think you are magnificent and an expert on so many things, and
Thank you.
Your social presence is an absolute joy from start to finish. I love seeing when there's a social post. You know the meme. Like yeah. That's every time there's a Tam post. Yeah, it's going to be good.
Yeah.
You know, it's going to be a good post. So, video games.
Mm-hmm.
Video games.
Pretty good. You're
really open about how important video games have been to you in your life over the years. How have they helped to shape you? What difference have they made to your life?
I think they've been quite significant in how they've kind of shaped who. I mean, like, I work in the industry and I'm here. I live in San Francisco. Obviously not born in San Francisco. I'm not an American. I was born in Pakistan and then lived most of my life in London. And then now I'm here in San Francisco, living the quote unquote American dream, whatever that is, in 2025. But yeah, it's been quite. Video games have been an anchor for me in a lot of ways. I remember, going through school and having the ups and downs of, a person, a boy, or whoever you may be, probably can relate to it, going through primary school, secondary school, college, uni, that kind of stuff. And I kind of just never thought of games as anything beyond a kind of thing that I enjoy and escape, and then something that kind of intrigued me. And it wasn't until like things really got to the point where I was struggling in one way or another that I realized that actually when I needed to find some center and anchor myself again, it was always video games that were the instigator of that. And eventually it kind of reshaped my view of what I should be doing, could be doing, to kind of orient it more towards video games. And I spent, I think it was in university, maybe my second or third year, where I had been studying for a law degree, where I realized that, maybe I shouldn't be doing this. I probably realized it when I had like a full-on mental breakdown and hated everything that I was doing, but that was kind of the instigating point where I realized if I don't do something that I truly love, I will be miserable, and who knows what could happen to me, what state I'll be in a few years from now. And I kind of sat down and realized that games were the thing that I cared about the most, and inadvertently had been kind of accidentally building a portfolio that could perhaps help me get a job in video games, in the video games industry, because ever since I was a kid, I'd play a game and then for my own amusement and kind of like enjoyment, I would just write down what I thought about a game. And that continued into the internet age, where I had a blog spot where I'd be like, I'll write what I think about this game for myself as kind of like a archive of stuff I've played. And when it came to it, I had the opportunity to kind of like take all that and just send it to someone and be like, hey, I would like to apply for this job. And then from there, it's kind of like defined pretty much every stage of my life up until this point.
I think that's like an amazing thing to, not least that it shows how important video games can be and how they can be sort of a touchstone in people's lives. But I think it shows an incredible kind of will that you've had, that in terms of you kind of took stock doing something that, that's a high profile kind of
real job.
Yeah. If you want to put a real job, but like a defined kind of social in today's society of like it's like a a very definite career path
Yeah.
of like, lawyer, doctor, it's kind of like a teacher. It's kind of that same real definite path to sort of take stock and go, actually, this isn't making me happy. This isn't fulfilling me in the way that I need to. I think that's an amazing step to take.
I think it's a lot easier to do now, regardless of the space that you're in. Like you said, lawyer, doctor, teacher, they have these defined pathways almost that as long as you tick a series of boxes, you'll make it to where you need, to some level of it. And there's the reliability to that, which is why I think a lot of, especially in South Asian culture, that's why a lot of parents push people towards it. One, because it has a prestige factor, both in the broader society. If you say I'm a lawyer, pretty much everyone goes, ooh. And they think highly of you. But especially in the South Asian culture, amongst our own like communities, when you say my son is a lawyer or I'm a lawyer or, whoever it may be, this person I know is a lawyer, there's an extra kind of like boost to it where people think a little more highly of you. So there's a lot of encouragement to go down that path in both society and in cultures. So kind of like putting that away and going for something that it will only land you somewhere kind of unpredictable.
Yeah.
And you get there by taking a series of risks and betting on yourself is on paper probably the most foolish way to do it. But in this day and age, it feels more doable than ever, where you can have, streamers that are through hard work and a little bit of talent and great deal of luck can make it, or people who make content on YouTube can make it. It's more plausible. But I think what's changed now is the value of self-fulfillment is way, way higher.
Yep.
I think that's one thing that is lost in the discussion around content creation, especially in the video game space, where, I mean, like, if you put a gun to my head and told me, like, do you think a youngster should aim to be in the video game industry? I'd say probably not, or at least have a backup.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you ask that person, like, what is it that you value most? And most people will say, like, I want to make stuff. I want to feel good about what I'm doing day to day. I think there's been a shift in people just, waking up and doing a 9 to 5 because that's what they need to do. And that's what they've been told to do. And now there is people who are like, no, my absolute priority is my happiness and my self-fulfillment. And I think video games is a really good space to find that, because it enables so many different forms of creativity.
You've got so many aspects to the industry, haven't you? You've got sort of the sort of press and creator and streamer side of it. You've got the tech and the dev side of it. So you've got people who are creative in terms of being on camera or writing or, artistically, you've got that kind of side of thing. You've got people who are sort of more, coding focused and things like that. So you've got every kind of part of it. And like you say, there's a real, there is like an opening up of like, pushing people that like the opportunities are there if you want to take them. And it's something that keeps coming up in these podcasts and sort of just discussions that sort of have with people across the industry is that it is just about passion and about that's what you want to, if that's what you want to do. And there's no good sort of just saying you want to do it because you kind of think you're going to be successful. It's you want to do it because you just love doing it.
Yeah.
It's not about like, well, I'm going to be the biggest YouTuber or I'm going to work for the biggest website or, whatever, or I'm going to be the biggest influencer or whatever that would mean. But it's about being satisfied creatively and not just, like you say, it's not just going to an office for 9 to 5. And there's nothing wrong with wanting that or doing that.
But
if it doesn't, if it doesn't make your heart sing, what's the point of just carrying on doing that, going down that line?
Yeah. Passion, like you said, passion is so important. I don't think there's very many successful modern day like creators or influencers or whatever it may streamers that are almost like manufactured, if you know what I mean. Like their goal is, I'm going to be the biggest streamer in the world. I mean, I'm sure there is one or two that people will say like, oh, this person did it. But for the most part, it's people who are passionate about doing something, and then the passion and the authenticity is what pushes them further and further and further. You look at someone like, I don't know, iShowSpeed, Kai Cenat, or whoever it may be on a world global stage, who, they're appearing in WWE, Royal Rumble in the case of iShowSpeed, and Kai Cenat's in like adverts with Snoop Dogg. But the goal probably to begin with wasn't to do that. The goal was to have fun and maybe build a small community of like-minded people. And the creativity is how you get there. And I think what's really cool about video games, and this is going to sound a bit capitalist, but I don't mean it that way, is games have definitely evolved from being a pastime niche or like a niche kind of like interest to an industry. And when I say industry, again, I don't mean it like in a capitalism kind of way, but an industry in that it enables so many different vocations and skill sets to exist within it. Like we said, the ones we pay attention to, the ones that are most obvious to us, are the ones that we see or want, which is like, I want to be a content creator, I want to be a streamer, I want to be a game developer, designer, writer. And then beyond that, there are like, it starts to kind of narrow, but there's so many different places you can go, whether that's, I want to work in publishing. People, I speak to people who are shocked when they learn that there's people out there who just travel around going to studios and, looking at people's games to see if they can give them money and fund it. That's a huge thing for, some people who work in that. And there's PR. And in the case of something like Insert Coin, for example, like you make, apparel that allows people to outwardly express their love of a game, which is not something that automatically someone would think of. I guess if I had to categorize it, it's like fashion design, right? Like you're building that kind of thing.
That kind of part of the Venn diagram, I guess,
And that's not something that immediately comes to someone's mind unless they have a passion for it. So if you're someone who likes making clothes or designs or, that kind of thing, and then you think, I also love games, how do I get into this? There is a pathway because, like I said, you guys exist. There's a variety of other, companies that specialize in nerd/gaming focused apparel. And it's just a fascinating world to be in right now. Like, regardless of what your skill set is, there's probably some way for you to fit into the video game industry. It just needs to be a genuine passion that takes you there.
I think that's a really good, like a really good message to put out to anyone who is looking to get into the industry. And it's like, harness that passion, and that's, good things can come from it. If it's not a guarantee. There's not a guarantee. Saying that have a backup plan.
Have a backup plan. Have a reliable, good backup plan. I always tell people, like, people are like, oh, how do I get into the industry? And I always say, don't focus on getting into the industry. Focus on something else, and have a stable, reliable thing that you're working towards or doing, and then start by treating it as a passion project. And then over time, use your own judgment to figure out when you should start moving the ratio of where you're spending your time. Because sometimes people go all in and it doesn't work out, and then it can be a big, big problem for them. Like I often try and help when I give people advice. I'm always like, treat this as a 1 in a million shot, but treat it as a 1 in a million shot that you can, even if you don't hit that one, you can spend that time enjoying what you're doing. And it will be a nice kind of like, nice thing that you do alongside the other thing that perhaps you're not as passionate about, but it enables you to do the thing that you love.
It pays your bills.
Yeah, it pays your bills. Like, paying your bills is very, very important. It doesn't sound glamorous, but I promise you, when you pay your bills, the thing that you want to do as a passion project becomes much easier and enjoyable. Because you have almost like if you have a stable 9 to 5, for example, that from 5 to, 11, depending on when your bedtime is, you've got a lot of time to work with doing something else there, and you have your weekends. But if you're like, and you can do that comfortably, but if you're like struggling to pay the bills, then desperation kind of comes in.
Start coming in, right?
Yeah. And you will just be better at the thing that you want to do eventually when you have that stable footing, and that stable ground to work off of.
I think that's a really, really good advice. So when you were saying, you mentioned right at the start, you mentioned that you were writing like reviews of games, like sort of like analog, I guess in like a notebook or whatever. What reviews were you writing? What were they? How did they manifest themselves?
They were just literally like writing. I mean, like initially it began with just writing almost kind of like a diary.
Right.
I'd play whatever Super Nintendo game, Sega Genesis game, Mega Drive as we call it back home, PC game. And I think a lot of it came from the fact that I have a terrible memory.
Right.
And I always have had a terrible memory. So a lot of it came from like wanting to remember what the game was so I could like recall it and talk about it later on. Um, and and that kind of eventually evolved into a point where when I got an actual PC for the first time, everything was a joy and exciting. Like a word processor was like fascinating when you first experienced it. You're like, oh, I could just type things into this.
Yeah.
So I was just, I mean, like I think I got a PC when I was in college for the first time, but I was still doing most of my work like drawn, handwritten
Yeah.
and stuff like that. But I wanted something to, I didn't have the internet for a really long time. I was very late to the internet, just because the kind of like economic means that I had, my family were capable of. Um, and so I wanted to type things out and use it. So I would just be like, I'm just going to write what I played in the video game and save it. And that was it. Like I'd moved from an analog written diary to a word processed digital diary. And over time, once I had access to the internet, it moved to that then became, the diary was on the internet and available for me to look at and anyone else who accidentally made their way there to read, which I'm sure would have been embarrassing for
Was
me.
it avid fans who are just eager? They're waiting for the next drop.
Yeah, it was literally just me on a blog spot.
That's really cool, though. I think that's really, because I think that's the thing. It comes back to that thing again of like, you do it because you love doing it. You're not doing it for the sake of, you're not posting it up there so that you get 50,000 likes. You're posting it up there because you feel in your heart that you want to tell the world about your thoughts on this thing. And I think that's the right way of doing it, right?
I think, that's an important thing to remember. Like, it's really good perspective. It's like, if you're chasing metrics and you want to, hit a certain level of views or readers or followers so you can feel good about what you're doing, you're probably going to fail, honestly. Like, you have to be genuine in why you want to do it. Like, and there is a point where you can shift the focus into it being more deliberate, Like, for example, I started writing game reviews and about games and the industry and the culture just because I enjoyed it. And I wanted to always be in that space, I wanted to escape my day to days by immersing myself in the world of video games. And I started off doing it. And eventually it got to the point where I was like, how do I make this real and make it meaningful?
Yeah.
And the passion never went away, but I definitely had a more deliberate purpose for it. But I still was driven by just the joy of it. And that's when I started like writing on the GameSpot user blogs, where I'd just be typing random, thoughts and that kind of stuff in there for no one really to read. I think the only person that eventually found their way to it was Danny O'Dwyer, who eventually I ended up like working with both on our own thing and then at GameSpot for a little while. And now obviously is he's one of the founders of, or is the founder of NoClip. But that was an important part of like the process, because it was like I was just writing for funsies and I also wrote in like the Destructoid community blogs and that kind of stuff. So I spent a lot, and I was, when I was using the internet, I would write in the community spaces there, and it was not like I copied and pasted stuff from one to the other. It was always like, oh, I'm going to try and write 3 different things that hopefully either, provide a different perspective on 3 different things, or the same perspective, or different perspective than the same thing. Like I think about, oh, I'm going to write about Metal Gear Solid 2 today. On this one, I'll write about the story. On this one, I'll write about the characters. And that one, I'll write about like the artwork. And that was how I would approach it, because it would really force me into thinking about things in a different way, and also thinking about what the audience responds to and what people like to see. And I realized that, like people really, on the Destructoid side, people really liked the cultural part of it. So they liked it when they were more responsive to me talking about the industry as a whole. So I started writing about, events and E3 and, executives and company stuff like that. And whereas the GameSpot side, people really resonated, or the few people that were interested they liked it when I talked about games specifically. So I'd be more like drill down in that. And I wouldn't have done all of that because it's a lot of work now that I think about it. I
Yeah.
wouldn't have done it unless I really loved doing it, and I really did love doing it.
I think that's the thing, is that just in and of itself shows how, passionate you are, that it's not just I like games, so therefore and that's the end of the journey. It's like this is like a real kind of all encompassing kind of desire and like a interest as well, not just like one part of it.
Yeah, I think like I love games is fantastic, but the thing that you need to have is the vehicle that kind of carries that and supplements that. You need to have a love for as well. So for me, I love games, but I also really love writing. Like I really enjoyed writing. As I grew up, when I was coming up, I've got terrible like number dyslexia. So I was terrible at anything number focused. Mathematics was a constant boon of my existence. And I was terrible at it. So I kind of over invested in writing. I was like, I need to compensate for being terrible with anything to do with numbers by being good at words. And I realized, it's really actually quite good because, I can express myself even if it's no one's reading it. It's just for me. I feel like I'm a little more in control of my thoughts and the things happening around me. So I developed a love of writing. And I feel like that's an essential ingredient of whatever you're trying to do if you hope that it's in the games industry. So if you love, like, you want to be a streamer, you have to love streaming as well. You have to be interested in the nitty gritty of streaming. If you're like want to be a video essay person, you need to be into the idea of making those video essays, writing a script, and perhaps even editing a video. So there's that. You need to have that kind of like two arms to the process, if you know what I mean, and you have to enjoy using both of those hands.
Yeah, you can't just sort of just say you like one part of it and hope the rest falls into place. It's that how the sausage is made, right? You want to kind of see every part of it so that you can. It's like a lot of my background's kind of in engineering, and you kind of like you sort of explode something out and sort of want to see it from every angle so that you can kind of fully understand it. It's not just all right. Well, that's it's not working because of that, or it is working because of this. It's like, well, you've got this problem at this side and this problem on that side, and but this bit's okay, and you wouldn't see it unless you looked at it from every angle.
Exactly, yeah.
And that's how you understand it as an industry, sort of holistically, rather than just like the micro detail of it.
Yeah.
So, a thing that I know you are really passionate about, and I mentioned it sort of at the start of the podcast, is you are a huge fan of Metal Gear Solid, the Metal Gear Solid series, and FromSoft Games as well.
Yes.
So what is it? I mean, I'm a fan as well, but I wouldn't put myself in anywhere near the same league of how
obsessed. You can say obsessed.
Yeah. All right, we'll use the word obsessed. No, but how you've got a real kind of it's that all encompassing kind of passion that you sort of you get so much out of it that beyond just the enjoying playing it and just beyond sort of like the sort of the surface lore kind of thing. What is it about those two games? I'm sort of loath to call FromSoft a game series, but FromSoft Games and the Metal Gear Solid series. What is it about those two that connect so deeply with you?
So for me, Metal Gear Solid, I'll start with that one, was I think it helped me understand what video games could be as a medium, as an art form. I'm sure, video games for me, like in my mind, like the Metal Gear Solid game, the first Metal Gear Solid that I played on PlayStation was the first game. And that's a stupid thing because video games before that clearly had a story. Like, I don't know, like Chrono Trigger existed before the incredible story. There's various Final Fantasy games. But for me, it was a story that kind of made me stop in my tracks and think about video games in a different way. And it made me think about story as being an essential requirement for me to enjoy games at that point. Like, I could play a Super Mario and not really think about what's going on. There's some sort of narrative in that, but I don't really care. I just want to stomp on Goombas, run really fast, and maybe whip out a cape and fly really weird and that kind of stuff. But from Metal Gear Solid onwards, it was like, this is kind of like it made me feel like I was watching a movie, which I also really love doing. I was like, I need that kind of feeling from this point again. And also, Metal Gear Solid was a kind of fascinating game for me because it also kind of dovetails into why I love From Software games, because I picked up Metal Gear Solid kind of just on a whim after seeing an advert for it. I had no idea. I had no idea that Metal Gear existed before then. Because I didn't have an MSX. I didn't have, the ability to access anything before Metal Gear Solid. But obviously, Metal Gear Solid has a lot of references to immediately. It has references to those previous games, and it doesn't stop to explain anything. It just kind of hints at these things. By the time you start playing, you're like, okay, so this Solid Snake guy has done stuff before, and this Master Miller guy they have a history together, and they're referencing Zanzibar, and it was this fascinating thing where I was like, oh, a universe exists. And I just had no idea that a universe exists. And it's not just like me starting at the very start of it. I'm like falling into a completely different world. And I thought that was the coolest thing because it kind of told me that there's more to this than you realize. And it kind of was like opening the door to be like, hey, you can make this your whole life. You can become obsessed with this and think about this material. And like, it was a long time before I was able to experience Metal Gear or even knew that Metal Gear existed. But it was like that element of like a world that existed before I had the ability to exist within it was always really, really important and fascinating to me. But beyond that, the actual like the writing and the dialogue and the kind of twists and turns and the cinematic nature of Metal Gear Solid and the iconic kind of moments, they really stuck out to me. They're very formative and they're like core memories in my video game playing experience. I could probably play a significant chunk of Metal Gear Solid with my eyes closed because it's as long as I can hear it. And I can also probably recite the entire script if I want to.
That's amazing.
Because I played it basically nonstop over and over and over again for years. Like it was just a game that I just needed to always play. So that is why I became obsessed with it. And then as I kind of matured and my thinking around the world became a little more, nuanced, and the game itself, the game writing and the gameplay became a little more sophisticated. So by the time Metal Gear Solid 2 came out, that game is fascinating. Like when I played it, I think I could only really appreciate it from a mechanical and visual perspective. I definitely liked the story, but I didn't truly understand it until I played it, continued playing it, and came back to it many, many times. And as I grew older and the real world around me changed, I started to appreciate it more and more. Metal Gear Solid 2 is one of those games where you can play it now, enjoy it, appreciate it for what it's trying to say, go away for 2 years, the world will change, come back, and somehow it will still be relevant. All these years later, in a world where we're constantly talking about fake news and the way information is used, you play Metal Gear Solid and you're like, how is this possible?
It's incredibly prescient, right?
That is what this game is about in a lot of ways. And AI and rogue elements taking over governments and people being boiled down to like, just their input into systems and that kind of stuff. You're like, this game is just like, it is fascinating in the way it's made. And that was a game that I adored. And then every single game kind of gave me a further appreciation for some different, like Metal Gear Solid 3, like that, the character element of it, and like feeling that, I think that was the first time I actually like felt emotionally like wrecked by a game. Because once you get to the end and you have seen what the boss has gone through and why and what Snake has been through, it's just like, how can you not like feel something there? Yeah, and Metal Gear Solid 4 perhaps is not my favorite of the bunch. I still love it, but there was a moment in that game that I'll never forget, and it was, spoilers, returning to Shadow Moses, and that was like, that was another moment where like it brought me to tears purely through nostalgia. I remember the very few notes of I believe it's called "The Best Is Yet to Come" from Metal Gear Solid, when that plays as you run into this like abandoned version of Shadow Moses. I just remember tearing up, and that was another moment where I was like, this is why video games are incredible. And knowing that this was effectively the end of the line for Solid Snake, there's moments in that game, when you're I think fans call it the microwave, where you have to like drag yourself through this kind of like hallway where Snake is basically being roasted alive, knowing that it's a quick time event, so there's only a certain amount that you can really do. Like you just have to hit the button and Snake makes it through. But I knew that, but I was not just hitting the button. I was standing up and pounding it as quickly as possible because I was just in my mind overcome with the desperation of, I need him to survive. And like, that is the power of that game. So I think every single time I played a Metal Gear Solid game, it reminded me why video games were so important to me. And that continued into every other game. Portable Ops, Peace Walker, Metal Gear Solid 5, Ground Zeroes, all of those are like a reminder for me of why video games are so important to the world and to me. And then a lot of the From Software stuff is also a lot of that. It's like From Software stuff is games are also like for me really, really fascinating because I come from a law background, which is what I studied. And then my other kind of like specialty studying was psychology. And obviously like game design is in many ways the manipulation of human psychology. And, you know, whether it's something as simple as, you know, doing something and getting the reward and that releasing an endorphin, you know, that's how, you know, design games, or feeling a game and how it makes, you know, it makes people feel when they're moving stuff around. That's important. I think the psychology that is put into the Souls games is really, really fascinating to me because of the way they kind of beat you down, break you apart to build you back up into something a little more capable and a little more confident. And that element of it is really, really, really appealing to me because it's one of the few games that I can point to and say, like, this is a game where if you know, work with it and are capable, like not everyone can play those games. So I can't like generalize it. But if you're the kind of person like me who is able to go where it wants you to go, it can affect genuine change on multiple human levels where it can make you a better person. And there's certain things that in terms of media that I really gravitate towards, and they're usually games that kind of fundamentally change who I am and what I'm capable of. Another thing that I really love is Batman.
Right. Yeah.
I'm a huge fan of Batman. Whether that's, you know, I've loved Batman since my first experience, which was the Kevin Conroy animated series. And from there, it's been an obsession of mine. And the reason it's become an obsession of mine is because Batman, Bruce Wayne, that kind of mentality that he has from, you know, reforging himself into someone that is capable of, you know, dishing out justice in whatever means is possible, that really helped me in moments where I needed to do the same thing. So I've had situations in my life where, you know, health wise, I've been in really bad positions. And at least in one of them, my obsession with Batman is what changed who I am. Like it saved me in a lot of ways. It made me a healthier person. And that is something that is important to me. And the same way, like the From Software games are, they're these little reminders that I'm capable of more than I think I am. And every single game has that impact on me. Whether it's, you know, the first Dark Souls or Demon Souls is the first one I actually played, where I imported it from Japan. Or China, actually. I imported it from China, I think, actually, because the Chinese version had the English kind of audio and subtitle track on it. So I imported I think it was called the Black Phantom Edition or the Red Phantom Edition, one of them, and played that. And it was one of those games where when I first started playing, I was like, this is an impossible game. I don't understand how to do it. But there was something in me that felt like there must be something to this. What is it? And then over time, I felt like as I got to understand it, I felt myself becoming more capable and felt myself changing. And that is carried through into Dark Souls 2, 3. You know, Sekiro is a huge one. I think recently really helped me because that game has a skill check with a boss that is perhaps the best distillation of the feeling of being beaten down and then overcoming a challenge to feel more capable. The boss is Genichiro Ashina, the first time you fight him. And I remember when I was reviewing that game, I thought, I think I fought him for like 4 or 5 hours.
Wow.
And it was like in that 5th hour, I realized that I needed to fundamentally change my mindset. And
Yeah.
the game actually tells you how to do it. It tells you like hesitation is defeat. And I realized that I was playing this in a way that I played other From Software games where I'm being very, very methodical and trying to suss out patterns and
Chip
in
away
doing
kind
that,
of thing.
chip away and be really like cheap and hit them and run away, hit and run tactics and that kind of stuff. And then I thought about it and I was like, they keep telling me like hesitation is defeat and, you know, that attitude shift. And I just kind of like, it clicked in my mind that I needed to be aggressive. And once that it all clicked into place and I defeated that boss, I genuinely broke down into tears. And I remember feeling like a god. And like the next few hours, I felt like unstoppable. And then it does that again to you repeatedly over and over again. But by that point, I had learned a lesson where it's like, this is a game that is going to make you feel the worst you have ever felt. But if you push through that, it will fundamentally make you a stronger person. And
Yeah.
when I finished Sekiro, I felt like on top of the world. But I also had multiple moments where I was at rock bottom. And that is why I love those games. They know how to kind of puppeteer players and manipulate psychology and feeling better than anyone else. And they do it also within a game that has like fascinating in-depth stories where you're usually in a place that has existed for many, many years before you arrived there, in the same way that Metal Gear Solid does. And you are an insignificant part of it, but you fight your way into making an impact in that world. And those are the games that really stick with me. Those games like Metal Gear, Soul Reaver is another one that's very similar. And, you know, From Software's games, that's why they're so important to me.
That's beautiful as a starting point for both series. But I think that's the thing that I could never get into them, and you really helped me like get into when I played Elden Ring.
Elden Ring, yeah.
And it's the only one that I've kind of got on with, and but I platinumed it, which I was ready to give up after about an hour, and then it was like no, and it was exactly how you said, is that change of mindset where it was like, oh God, it's you're used to being kind of this. A lot of games you're kind of used to being this unstoppable force kind of thing, but they're very much making you a tiny cog, a grain of sand in the grand machine. And so I think it's a thing that as we get older as humans, we kind of, it's a lesson we learn of like resilience and like, well, that's knocked me down, but then I can go back and I can sort of just, what have I learned from it? But it's kind of that in its own little sort of nutshell within a game. And as you say, it's within this bigger world that makes you feel kind of small and insignificant to start off with. And then you've got this, this boss beating the hell out of you repeatedly. And it is like you're banging your head against the wall. There's so many times I think everyone can probably, a gamer or non-gamer, can relate to having being in a situation where you feel like you're banging your head against the wall and you can't get through it and you can't work out how to do it. And then all of a sudden you have the light bulb moment and it clicks. It might not be straight away. It might be you've gone off and done something else and you come back, but then it does click and it's like, oh my God, I've beaten that. And that's, for me, that's what like beating an Elden Ring boss was like that. It was the same level of like sorting out something that was in my work or my life. You've got that kind of a feeling of accomplishment that you don't get, I think, with a lot of other games. It's a very, very, like you say, it's a very clever manipulation of like your mindset of like you've gone from kind of thinking, I'm never going to beat this. This is it. This is it. This is the end. I'm going to put my controller down now before I break it. And then you come back and it's like, all right, I've managed to adapt to fit that what they're trying to make you to do.
It teaches you so many important life lessons where it's like in most games, like you fight a hard boss. I know I've done it in many Final Fantasy games. It's like, I'm going to go and grind for 20 hours. I'll be back and I will have many, many more levels. I'll hit this ability and you're cooked. That is it. Whereas this is a game where, like, the From Software games are games where they show you that hard work, perseverance is important to the growth, and as is failure. Failure is a very, very, very important about a part of self-improvement. And I think that's the one thing that, hero trip games miss, where it's like it's always escalating your ability so that you never feel incapable. You might not feel amazing or like particularly proficient at what you're trying to do, but you will always feel pretty capable. Or that is kind of like an inauthentic way of, again, that's the point. It's escapism. You want that power trip fantasy, and I love those games as well. But for the From Software games, what that does, it tells you like you need to fail. Failure is a good part of it as long as you come at it with a good attitude. Like you can go away and you can grind as much as you want. You can come back with the Drake sword or whatever it may be to fight. It's overpowered. But when you get into that fight, even if you've got high level weapons, there's still no guarantee that you will, cakewalk your way through this.
No.
The important thing is when you get knocked down, how do you respond to that? What are you learning from that? How are you resilient enough to know that you're more than that failure and come back and try again and keep doing it until you find either peace with what's happening or you figure out a way to overcome it. And that is, I think, one of the most important lessons that I've learned in video games through the From Software games, because from that point on, that was when I was a teenager, I started playing that. I saw those lessons. I saw those opportunities to apply those lessons in real life every day, whether it was like, applying for a job and not getting it, or, suddenly facing the challenge of moving across the world, losing friends, losing family, feeling, bad about myself and my health. By going through those games, I found myself a little more able to withstand some of life's more unexpected and harder challenges, which I know sounds incredibly corny, but I genuinely believe that
it's true.
Yeah, those games are they are instrumental in helping me become a better person. And I think that anyone can find that same lesson or build that same resilience through these games or other games. These are, From Software stuff is what appealed to me, and that kind of like message got through to me through that vehicle. But it can be done in other games, whether it's, like MMOs like World of Warcraft or Final Fantasy or, Balatro or wherever it may be. You can find that kind of message in video games. And it's why I think, like, again, video games as a medium are so, so important now.
Well, yeah, I mean, they've got such it goes beyond, like, there's the personal impact that they have, obviously, in terms of, as you said, like the growth of, resilience and things like that in the individual, but also sort of on a wider societal thing, they've got such a great impact as well, and how they have a role to play and they have a story to tell. And that, I don't think any medium worth its salt isn't going to, it has to reflect and build on what is going on around it, because otherwise what's the point of it? Even like you said, like where something's like a power fantasy kind of thing, it has its roots deep within people not feeling, they're feeling disenfranchised with the world around them. That by its nature, that's how it must be, right?
Yeah, and what I love about games now is they are a gateway and a bridge to understanding so many other people in society. Yeah. Like I'm someone who, I have very little or had very little familiarity with, issues pertaining to trans people, people that have accessibility kind of concerns, people who are oppressed. I, in my lifetime, have been subjected to racism. So I have that kind of element of it. I have a specific kind of racism that's aimed towards me. I've never experienced what, Black people might have faced in the same way. But I have had the opportunity to experience that, whether through in games or people who play those games and are able to interpret them in a way that I'm incapable of because I don't have those life experiences and those lived experiences, and they make you a better person. I think it's so important these days that there's so many different opportunities to find yourself in games, and also for people to learn about others in games. So for me, like broadening my understanding of the world and the people in it, and trying to develop empathy towards people and understanding towards people, my main vehicle of doing that is video games and other forms of media, as well as talking to those people, you know. But I feel like in this industry, when you have that common cultural touch point, it's so much easier to make that connection. Like me, as someone who has, you know, a kind of not a great understanding around like trans issues, may not have had it a little while back. Maybe I play a game and someone else that, you know, is talking about trans issues, maybe the trans himself mentions it, I can use that game as a point of like entry to be like, hey, I played this game. This is what it said about this game. Can you tell me a bit more? Am I right in this belief? Like, what's your perspective on this game? And we can just talk about the game. And that's a fascinating thing for me. I feel like games are bridging the gap between people and bringing cultures close together and people close together. And it's happening despite people's attempt to stop that from happening.
Yeah.
I think it's a
derailing it for no reason.
Yeah, I think like they can. I'm sure they will, and they will continue to try to derail that. I think it's just an inevitability of life. Like the world is changing in a way that you know, it can be not great around us, but I genuinely feel like the worse that gets, the closer it brings people together through other forms of entertainment and media and you know, communities online and cultures and that kind of stuff. So you know, we're at many would describe, you know, the current political climate as perhaps one of the worst of all times, you know, but I feel so connected to other people through games. I feel good in a community. There's a community out there for me. I have a group of friends who, you know, have different backgrounds and we all connected through games. So video games right now are a lifeline for a lot of people. And I think that we know it. I think that it's just like people is growing in that way and it's becoming more relevant to people, which is really exciting.
Games are good.
Games are very, very good. Like I said, yeah.
But I think that's the thing is that, you know, we've lived through so many times where people have sort of denounced games as being bad for the individual and for society. And I think the last, you know, particularly the last sort of 20 years, definitely 25 years, it's getting down to a finer and finer point of showing how, you know, I think that's what you mentioned is perhaps the most important thing, where it's like it's bringing people together.
Yes,
and it's bringing people together who are, you know, particularly maybe a thing that kind of weirdly helped it was like lockdown as well, where people couldn't move in the same circles as perhaps they did, and so the integration of and interaction between people who perhaps wouldn't have played games together or wouldn't have talked about games together, suddenly they are, and suddenly it's coming down to a finer and finer point. It's bringing them, you know, as you say, it's bringing that understanding of each other. You don't go into these things like shedding all of your, you know, your personal history. You don't do all that and then play a game. You're bringing that into that game with you. And so how you play the game, kind of whether or not you think you're hiding it, I don't know if you necessarily would, but you kind of like you're bringing that experience with you, and it helps. You're helping to shape the game, and the game's helping to shape you, and it works both ways.
Yeah, 100%. It's like you said, during lockdown, that was like one of the most difficult periods for a lot of people's lives. I had just moved to America, so like I moved over. A few weeks later, it was locked down, and I spent the next 2 years in one apartment in a room, basically. And that was like very, very tricky. That's also when I started streaming. And it's like, that was like the most intense period of streaming that I'd done. And I met so many interesting different people through doing that, and communities. And the kind of the power of games to bring people together is unrivaled, I think.
Yeah.
And it's like, again, coming back to like the stuff that you guys do and the place you guys hold within the industry, the amount of amazing conversations I've had that have started with, where did you get that hoodie? Is like unbelievable. Like the amount of people that have been like, that hoodie is so cool, where can I get that? And I'll send them a link, and it's then from there, it's like, I really love this design part of it. I love that. I love this boss in it. Like, what do you like about this game? I've had like really long, a lot of these are like on Instagram or like, through Twitter DMs or even public, Twitters or whatever it may be. But it's like, I spoke to people who love the same thing I do, and we came together because they saw me wearing a hoodie or a t-shirt or a pair of jogging bottoms or whatever it may be. And like that is what, that is the power of, like, I think, community in games, and it's only gonna become more potent. So it's video games are amazing now, and they're exciting going forward.
They are. They're brilliant. They're brilliant. Mm-hmm. So a change of tact. That now, like a complete different left field direction we're going in now. But another thing I know and that I love about you is your passion for 1993 science fiction action movie Demolition Man.
Demolition Man, hell yeah!
You knew where I was going even before. Yeah. Like 1993, right? What is it? That's it. So there were a couple of you might guess where this is going, but there were a couple of time games that came out around the time, which I'm sure you know already. And one that I hadn't known, this is something that when I was doing my little bit of research, is that the 3DO game had exclusive footage made for it, which is wild. That's amazing. But if you were going to make a game now for Demolition Man, it can be in the Demolition Man universe. Yeah. Or it can be specific to the film. What would it be like? How would it work?
Mate, you have no idea how much time I've spent thinking about this. So this could be an hour long on its own. I've thought about so many different like approaches to it. Like if it was just a straight up like translation of what that movie is, like almost one for one, you could take it in a Gears of War style direction. Where, you have that kind of over-the-shoulder style kind of action game, cover-based shooter, where I would definitely have a high level of destructibility in it, where it's, almost like Mercenaries, but was back in the day, because the whole, Demolition Man, Simon Phoenix and John Spartan, they're just known for, like, when they clash, everything around them comes to, crumbles. So like having that part of it could be really cool. But like, I've also thought about like original stories within that universe. Like I would love the idea of, imagine a future where it turns out, somehow some part of Simon Phoenix's DNA was like, preserved. And now they're like bringing him back almost as like a new kind of a new iteration of himself, but not him, just like almost like his his ancestor, whatever it may be. And then you have like you just have a police force that is forced to like deal with this dude again, who's just like running amok.
Wave after wave of him.
Yeah, exactly. Like that would be really cool. I'd love an open world, like, because the kind of location of San Angeles is like you get to see a decent chunk of it. Fun fact: the final like set piece that happens with Simon Phoenix and John Spartan, where they finally come to blows, takes place in the same location that E3 was held in many years.
Oh, really?
So when I watch that movie, I just go, I've been up that escalator many times. I know exactly where they are. But like you get to see, I would love to see so much more of what that is, in an open world style game. Something like, I don't know, Crackdown or something like that. There's so many different ways that you could use that IP for something. If you're out there and you're an IP holder trying to make a Demolition Man game, just let me know. Hit me up. I have documents ready for you.
That's amazing. I'd really love to see it happen. I remember seeing it way back. I think it might have been a pirated VHS back in the day that I originally saw it on, because I think I would have been just too young to see it, I think, at the cinema. And I was too good to sneak in, but I wasn't too good to watch it on pirated video. But I was trying to think of like what I would, like how I would do it. And I don't know why, but do you remember the PlayStation game The Getaway?
Yes.
Where it's like you had the two protagonists and then you had like, so you saw it from one side then the other. Then you could do it like that, and you could do like the Spartan Phoenix sides. So and then you get to the end, and then you have like the same fight as if it was like a following the actual story thing.
Yeah, I think there's so much potential there.
Yeah.
And who knows? They just released it on Blu-ray, so if you're out there,
let's make it happen.
Everyone buy it. I already own 2 copies. I bought 2 copies. I did my part.
You've done your bit, right?
Now I just need everyone else to do this.
So we're going to jump into some AUTOFIRE questions now. These are you don't have to answer them quickly. These are the questions that other gamers ask other gamers, basically.
Yeah.
So how you get under the skin of a fellow gamer when you first meet them, perhaps. So kicking things off, what was your first video game memory?
Oh, my first video game memory, I think, was playing... I think it was Super Mario World on a Super Nintendo, or seeing it. My cousins had it, and I would go to their house, and they would play. And I remember thinking, "Wow, this is wild. He's controlling that little man on the screen."
Did they do the thing where they gave you a controller?
Oh yeah. I suffered because I was every Goomba just getting stomped on. For some reason I was like, how do I beat this Mario guy? Not knowing that I was being manipulated.
You were being played.
Yeah.
So we've kind of touched on some of your favorite games, but what would you say is your favorite game of all time?
Bloodborne, probably. Yeah, I have to say Bloodborne. Before
That's
Bloodborne,
a really definitive answer. There was no swing back. Most people I ask them, and it's like, "Oh, that's real tricky," and it's like Bloodborne.
Bloodborne. Before it was probably Super Metroid.
Yeah.
But I mean, like, there's a lot of commonalities between Bloodborne and Super Metroid that I won't get into now. But yeah, I think Bloodborne is the game now. Occasionally, I think like. Yeah, that's my favorite game of all time. I think the game that perhaps had the most impact on me was Metal Gear Solid.
I mean, that's 2 very, very strong contenders, right? So if you could, and again, we've kind of touched on this, and feel free to say Demolition Man, the Tamoor Hussain Chronicles. But if you could make, like, what would be your perfect future game? So it can be a game that's been announced and is coming out, or it can be something that, just that you think would be the perfect game to come out from anywhere.
I mean, like, I'm on record saying I would love to see more done in the Legacy of Kain universe.
Yeah.
I would love, if you go to my YouTube, I have a lengthy video on how I would revive that IP. This was well before the remaster was released and whatever else. I mean, like, they're making everything but a new game currently. They're making figures which are extremely expensive and prohibitively expensive. Not even I'm like, okay, I can't buy that.
Even you're like,
I'm not buying that. It's too expensive. If they want to send it to me, I'll happily take it. But they've got like a book coming out now. They already released a comic book, and they've got a board game coming out. So I'm hoping it's building up towards a new game.
Like momentum.
I would love to see like a modern remake of Soul Reaver, and then going back to the original Legacy of Kain. That's the one that I would love to see, I think. Especially in the world where FromSoft's games exist, because there's, again, a lot of similarities between Soul Reaver and FromSoft's games. I feel like there's a lot of inspiration that could be taken there. That's what I would want. If I had to like select one of the many dumb game concepts I've like sat down and thought about, because I'm a sad person, I once thought long and hard about a co-op action game based on the Supernatural IP,
right?
The TV show.
Yeah,
I for some reason I was really into the first few seasons of Supernatural. I think I dropped off when Castiel started being a bit of a weirdo. I was like, I'm good. I'm moving on from this, but I hear it's still good. But I would love a co-op kind of occult kind of shooter, first-person shooter, where it's like you have guns, but there's also like spells, and you have to take defensive assault on the windowsills so you're not getting overrun by these demons. And I even concepted like the first opening level, which is like on a train.
Oh, amazing.
And you start off on either end. So depending on if you pick Sam or Dean, you're on either sides of it.
That's really cool.
If you're playing as Sam, you have like these tools like the salt and kind of like a book, a spell book, almost like, in whenever they need to seal away a demon, they have to like read from this book as they're being kind of like set upon, and have also like, the sigil on the floor that they need to trap within. And then that's what you do if you're kind of Sam, and you have to kind of like position them. Whereas if you're Dean, you're kind of like fighting your way to Sam using like the third person action, like shotgun, trying to move your way there. And that then you'd come together for like the title sequence, supernatural.
That's
like
really cool.
I've spent a lot of time thinking about really dumb video game concepts, and that is one that I've always thought about. Like, that could be pretty cool.
I think that sounds awesome.
And it would be made by Remedy.
Nice. Yeah. Well, they need to
give me a call. Yeah. Sam Lake, hit me up. I got some ideas.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's a great answer. So, going to like gaming now, when you're playing games now, what's your go-to gaming snack?
Oh, gaming snack, huh? So I've attempted to become a little more healthy lately. I don't have a lot of gaming snacks, but I will say, on the healthy side, I'm very partial to like cashew nuts,
nice,
and almonds. If I want sweets, thankfully there's a nice industry of smart sweets that now exist, which are like nice tasting sweets that are not super high in sugar and like calorie dense. But my like goblin mode snack, where I'm like, I don't care, I just want to stuff my face and feel like good about what I'm eating and enjoy it, is a nice big bag of Bombay mix, which might not translate to like a worldwide audience, but Co-Fresh Bombay mix.
We've had this conversation before, right?
We probably have.
I'm sure we have, because there was a bit, I think it might have been around the time, it must have been around the time, I think, when you moved to the States, that there was like a weird kind of period over here where you just couldn't get it. Not in the shops.
Because I bought them all and took it with me.
You took suitcases with you.
Yeah.
But it was just like, and there was one, I'm sure I told you this story as well at the time, that my wife, when I think it was our first child, she had, like people get pica, like cravings for stuff, and she wanted Bombay mix. I think it was the first one. It might have been the second. I don't know. I can't remember. It was there's a lot of sleep been lost since then. But it was like, that's all she wanted. And again, it was the same thing. It was like, when you want it, you never find it. It's just gone.
Yeah, the amount of times when I was streaming, I desperately tried to get Co-Fresh to sponsor me. I was like, I messaged them. I was like, you don't have to send me any money. All you have to just give me every now and then a few packets of Co-Fresh. I will eat them on stream. I've been advocating for you for free for many years. I am willing to like help get you exposure.
Just
I want more people.
Back.
Yeah,
just
exactly.
Pay the piper.
I don't want, you don't have to give me a single penny a pound. Just a couple of bags every now and then. They're very hard to get in the US, but sadly they just did not reply to any of my messages. And
if you ever need any
since 2022,
if you ever need any, just give us a shout and I'll have a look. I will send some over.
Thankfully, I think I've been such a loudmouth about it that every now and then, whenever someone's coming to the US, they'll just message me and be like, "Do you want Bombay mix?" I'm like, "Yes, please, thank you."
I can't blame you. That's a great choice. So, final question: who do you think is the best dressed video game character?
Oh, best dressed video game character. Ooh. I mean, I think technically the best answer is Sam Lake in Alan Wake 2, probably.
Yep.
Because he looks amazing in that, and he's also, he's got a whole song and dance routine. He is effectively the best dressed character there. I mean, like he dresses like he dresses in real life, which is immaculately incredible. Who is the coolest dressed character? I have to give it to like the Bloodborne Hunter.
Yeah.
Maybe actually not the Bloodborne Hunter. I would give it to Lady Maria.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
She, like, her outfit. Oh, that is a spiffy outfit. It looks cool as hell. I think so.
I think that two very good choices. Mm-hmm. Very good choices. So, what have you got coming up next? What's going on in the coming weeks and months for Tam?
I've been doing a lot of traveling. I've been going around previewing a few games. So I'll have a few previews coming out soon. including a game that I think predictably people can guess I'm excited for. May have talked about. I took a real long break from streaming, primarily because I kind of like I was doing some kind of activism around certain issues. Around the time I was also streaming, and it meant that a kind of like a contingent of people who didn't like what I was saying were kind of very much focused in on how they could get to me. So, and also I was moving at the same time, apartments, and it kind of become and then I had some visa issues in between. So it became an extended break, and I've been kind of gearing up to come back and start streaming again. I'm very excited. I love streaming, but I haven't been able to do it for ages. So I'm very, very excited about coming back. I'm on Twitch as Tamoor H, and pretty much everywhere as Tamoor H. So you can find me doing stuff there. So I have a lot of personal and professional projects coming up, which is exciting for me. But yeah,
Amazing.
That's pretty much it.
Thank you so much, Tam, for being part of the show.
Thank you for having me.
And thank you all for watching as well. And we hope to see you again very soon. And in the meantime, check out this outro from Insert Coin. Bye.
Hey, do you love video games? Us too. Insert Coin has been creating unique official gamer gear since 2010. From Ace Attorney to Yakuza, Cyberpunk 2077 to Astrobot. Represent your favourite games in style at www.insertcoinclothing.com. Split Screen, powered by Insert Coin.